There was a time when watchmakers weren't afraid to experiment. The 1970s gave us bold case shapes, unconventional layouts and one design feature that has almost disappeared from modern watchmaking: the faceted crystal. With the Futurist, Vario brings it back, and that in many ways tells you exactly what kind of watch this is. The Futurist doesn't try to be another generic vintage reissue, nor does it rely on nostalgia alone. Instead, it revives a forgotten design language and translates it into something that still feels fresh today. So let's step into yesterday's vision of tomorrow and explore the Vario Futurist. Now before we continue, just a quick personal note from my side to everyone watching these reviews. In daily life I work as a school photographer and I run a company specialized in sensors. That also explains why I'm not able to produce watch reviews every single week. On top of that, I'm often dependent on brands being willing to send watches in for a review. And that simply doesn't happen all the time. So for me, Does Watch channel has always been a project built on passion. A passion for watches, but also for photography, videography and storytelling. I genuinely love making these reviews and I truly hope that you enjoy watching them just as much. So special thanks to every one of you and all the watch brands who support my little channel. Now enough about me, let's get back into the Vario Futurist. And if you enjoyed the work I do here, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps and I genuinely appreciate it, so thank you. The appeal of the Futurist starts with its case design. While many vintage-inspired watches borrow a few colors or a retro handset and call it a day, Vario has gone much further here by recreating one of the defining visual signatures of the era. A faceted crystal rising above a sharply sculpted case. And that case really is the foundation of the watch. The shape feels architectural rather than merely decorative, with strong lines, crisp transitions and a silhouette that immediately stands apart from the usual crowd of skin divers, field watches and dress pieces. A particularly nice detail is the ribbed upper section of the case. Those finely cut grooved catch the light beautifully and give the watch a very distinct Art Deco flavor without ever feeling forced or gimmicky. Together with a crown at 12 o'clock, they create a watch that feels unconventional, but also remarkably coherent. What impressed me the most on the wrist is how slim and elegant the Futurist appears. And looking at the crystal and the amount of visual detail in the case, you might expect something bulky or top heavy. But that simply isn't the case. It wears flatter and more refined than the design might initially suggest. And that balance is one of the reasons why this watch works so well. Of course, the star of the show here today is the crystal itself. I caught myself staring many times at the face of this watch and being distracted with my daily activities because I was looking on how this watch was playing with the light. It really is a true spectacle and it shimmers like a gem in a way where Grand Seiko could become jealous of. Historically, faceted crystals were often made from acrylic, which made it easier to create dramatic shapes and playful distortions. Reproducing that look today in sapphire crystal is a far more ambitious undertaking. And it's also one of the reasons why this watch feels more special than a quick glance than the spec sheet might suggest. And talking about specs, here they are on the screen. Depending on the angle, the crystal can completely change the appearance of the dial beneath it. Reflections dance across the facets, light bends in different directions, and the whole watch takes on a very dynamic personality. It's one of those design elements that photographs can hint at but never fully capture. In person it gives the Futurist much more of its charm, and more importantly it gives the watch a genuine identity. And in a market full of familiar looking microbrand releases, that really makes a difference here. Now beneath that dramatic crystal, Vario has wisely kept the dial itself more restrained with this new color. The black sunburst finish is subtle rather than flashy, and that's exactly the right decision in my opinion. Instead of fighting for attention, it allows the architecture of the crystal and case to remain the focal point. As the light moves across the dial, the sunburst effect reveals itself gradually, giving the watch just enough visual richness without disturbing the overall balance. Look closer, however, and there are some very thoughtful details here, like the applied indices, which are positioned partly within the rehaut, which adds a surprising amount of depth and gives the dial a more layered appearance than you might expect at this price point. Under the light, they almost seem suspended around the perimeter of the dial, and it's a detail that quietly elevates the overall presentation here. Finishing throughout the watch also deserves credit, with the transitions between brushed and polished surfaces are really crisp, and the case details are cleanly executed, and the whole package feels carefully considered rather than rushed to market. And the Lume is another area where Vario has clearly improved. Compared to the earlier models such as the 1945 D12, the Futurist offers a noticeably stronger and more confident lume after dark. It may not be the central selling point of a design-driven watch like this, but it's still nice to see that Vario hasn't neglected the practical side of the experience. One area where Vario really should know what it's doing is straps, and fortunately that really shows here. Long before the brand became known for its watches, Vario built its reputation by making straps, and that heritage is still very much visible here. The supplied black leather strap feels subtle, comfortable and well matched with the character of the watch. It complements the Futurist's elegant architectural design and gives it a slightly dressier feel on the wrist. For those who want to lean further into the retro futuristic personality of the watch, the optional elastic stainless steel bracelet is well worth the look, especially for the price. Swap the leather strap for that bracelet and the Futurist changes character almost instantly. Suddenly it feels less like a contemporary design piece and more like a genuine visitor from the 1970s. Now that versatility is one of the Futurist's strengths. Depending on how you wear it, the Futurist can feel refined, playful or distinctively vintage inspired without losing its identity. What makes Vario interesting to me is not just the product itself, but also the way the brand has evolved. Vario started out as a strap company and gradually grew into a watch brand with a very recognizable identity of its own. Rather than chasing the same formulas as everyone else, Ivan and Judy have built the brand around original designs, thoughtful details and a willingness to take creative risks. During our visit to Singapore in 2024, me and my family had the chance to meet Ivan and see firsthand the passion behind the brand. And today Vario has its own showroom there, where visitors can experience the watches, straps and accessories in person. In an industry that increasingly lives online, there is something refreshing about meeting the people behind the brand and seeing how much of themselves they have put into the final product. And with the Futurist, that personal touch comes through quite clearly. Inside the Futurist beats the Miyota 9039. And I think it's a very sensible choice for a watch like this. No, it isn't the kind of movement that enthusiasts will discuss for hours over coffee, but it does exactly what this watch needs it to do. It's reliable, slim, modern and runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour, which gives the seconds hand a pleasingly smooth sweep. Perhaps most importantly, the 9039 movement is only 3.9mm thick, and that helps explain why the Futurist wears as elegant as it does. A bulkier movement would have compromised the proportions of the watch, and in a design this dependent on shape and silhouette, yeah, that really would have mattered. In other words, this is a movement chosen in service of the design, not in spite of it. And sometimes that is exactly what good watchmaking looks like. At $648 US, the Futurist sits in a very interesting part of the market. This is not an entry-level impulse buy microbrand watch, but neither is it trying to compete with luxury pricing. Vario could have used a standard flat sapphire crystal or could have avoided the ripped case details. It could have played it safe with a more conventional shape and still sold a perfectly decent retro-inspired watch. But instead the brand chose to do the different thing. The faceted sapphire crystal is a big part of that, and recreating such a complex shape in sapphire is far more demanding than using acrylic or a standard crystal. But it's also absolutely central to the watch identity. The same goes for the sculpted case and its machine detailing. These aren't random styling tricks. They are the reason that the Futurist feels like a coherent design rather than just another vintage themed release. As for the dial colors, Vario offers several Lume options that suits the concept very well, including green, silver and blue. They each bring a slightly different personality to the watch. The black dial featured in this review is the most understated of the bunch, and that restraint actually works in its favor here. It keeps the focus on the design and architecture of the case and watch overall, rather than competing with it. If you want the boldest expression of the concept, one of the Lume dials definitely may well be the way to go. But if you prefer something a little more versatile and quietly elegant, the black version makes a very strong case for itself. Alright, final thoughts then. After spending time with the Vario Futurist, one thing becomes very clear. This is not a watch designed to blend into the background. From its faceted sapphire crystal and architectural case design to its layered dial and unusual crown placement, the Futurist offers something genuinely different in a market that often rewards familiarity over originality. Of course, it isn't perfect. The crown at 12 o'clock contributes significantly to the watch character and helps preserve the slim profile, but it isn't the most convenient crown to operate when setting the time. Also, the rotor noise of the Miyota is quite loud, which they are known for, but yeah, it really doesn't bother me personally. That said, it is something to keep in mind when you are interested in the Futurist. Now, this is not a watch you buy because it promised maximum practicality in every small detail. But buy this because this is different, in a good 1970s retro-licious way. The Futurist is clearly inspired by the past, but it doesn't feel trapped by it. Instead, it takes a forgotten design language and reinterprets it in a way that still feels relevant, wearable, and genuinely fun to experience every day. At $648 US, the Vario Futurist delivers originality, thoughtful design, and a level of finishing that makes it stand out in a very crowded microbrand landscape. It is not merely a tribute to the past, it is yesterday's vision of tomorrow, finally realized. Now, thank you all watch friends for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Ciao.